Just before 3 a.m. on a cool autumn night in 2016, a family in Jacksonville, Florida, awoke to the noise of loud banging on their front door. Confused and a little frightened, they unlocked and opened their door to the surprise visitor. In the few minutes that followed, their lives were forever changed. A beloved husband had been killed, leaving a frightened widow and a shocked teenage daughter as the only witnesses. Except neither one of them had laid eyes on the killer. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and this is Just Thought Lounge. JTL is the true crime channel that delivers serious, well-balanced coverage of the cases that really make you think. Today we're taking a look at a recently solved case from Florida that may have you treating your neighbors with a healthy bit of caution in the future. This is the story of how a man at the age of 48 who had a career in IT, a happy marriage, a loving daughter, and a life free of controversy could find himself the target of a murder plot. Let's take a look. In the northwest of Jacksonville, Florida, is a suburban area that until recently had been characterized by farmland and open space. Now the sprawling city has extended outwards, and the neighborhood is a mixture of rural landscape and new housing developments. Located in this region is V.C. Johnson Road. It is full of open space and scattered houses on relatively large plots of land. Neighbors have reported that traffic on the road is almost exclusively for those who live there. It is not an area one passes through. By the autumn of 2016, the Brenton family had lived on the road for 20 years, and most of those had been peaceful. On the evening of the 20th of September 2016, the Brenton family turned into their bedrooms for the night at a reasonable time. Jonathan Brenton, known as Joe, slept in a room towards the back of the house. According to his loving wife, Venus, Joe was afflicted with a bit of a snoring problem. She had relegated him to the back bedroom while she slept in the front of the house. The couple's 17-year-old daughter, Josephine, who goes by Josie, was also at home. At just before 3 a.m. that night, now the early morning of the 21st of September, the Brentons awoke to a loud banging on their front door. Venus arose first and walked straight to the back of the house to find her husband. Josie, meanwhile, startled by the commotion, also arose and met her parents as they gathered by the front entrance. Sleepy, confused, and more than a little frightened, Joe instructed his wife and daughter to stand back. He needed his keys to unlock the door and view who was outside. From the hallway, Venus and Josie heard the jingling of the keys on their chain. What they heard next changed their family forever. Gunshots rang out. They were not sure how many shots. A lot was all they could recount. Projectiles broke through the decorative glass on the external doors. Bullets struck inside the home within inches of where Venus stood. Josie ran for her bedroom, where she found safety under her bed covers. When the shots abruptly ceased, Josie heard only the sounds of a vehicle door, screeching tires, and the attacker making their escape from the property. Joe Brenton was motionless on the floor. From where she hid in the next room, Josie called 911.
I think my dad got shot. He opened up the door, he went down and locked the door, and somebody shot at him multiple times. Please send somebody quick.
Hey, you know what? 1174 Jimmy Johnson Drive. Stay along. Did you see anyone?
No, but it's a safe for me to go make sure my dad's okay.
Okay, fine. The person I shot him, are they still there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Were they drive? Were they drive by? Okay. And so do you know what kind of car they were in? Do you know what kind of car they were in?
No, I don't know what car they were in.
Okay, and how was that?
Typically,
How was that?
he's out.
And do you believe he's beyond any help?
No, I don't believe he's beyond help. Just please get an ambulance here.
We're getting as fast as we get as fast as we can. How old is your dad? Okay, they're on BC Johnson right now.
They're right here. Thank you.
Okay, you see them?
Yeah, I see the police car.
Okay, is the police man coming up to you?
The paramedics were unable to revive Joe Brenton. He had sustained multiple gunshot wounds to his chest and head. It was too late to save him. Neither Josie nor her mother had laid eyes on the shooter. They were unable to provide any details, including the number of attackers that had come to the door. Was there a single shooter, or, given the number of shots, perhaps multiple assailants? The Jacksonville police recovered a total of 16 shell casings at the scene. There was no DNA found, nor fingerprints. The casings suggested a single firearm was used, and by extension, a single shooter, but the weapon itself was not located. The shooter had not waited to open fire, preferring instead to begin the onslaught as soon as Joe had been visible through the glass on the external door, as though they knew he would be the one to answer the knock, and he had been the target. Jonathan Joe Brenton had been 48 years old. For 20 of those years, he had worked as an information technology engineer for the University of North Florida, beginning his career at the school back in 1995. According to those that worked with Joe and knew him well, he was essential in building the modern network on which the school operated. He was also a kind man with no known enemies. Speaking with detectives in the immediate aftermath of the murder, Venus told them of one lead with potential. Both Joe and Venus Brenton had spent that day preparing their testimony for an upcoming trial. On the day of the attack, the 21st of September, they were due in court to give evidence against an alleged robber who had been arrested and charged with breaking into their home 2 years earlier. Could it be a coincidence that Joe was scheduled as a key witness in the accused burglar's trial the very next day? There were two considerations that made this lead problematic. The first was that the accused, a man named Jacorian McCrae, was essentially a friend of the family. Corey, as they knew him, had grown up just down the road from the Brentons. He had gotten into some trouble with the law in his teenage years, and now as an adult, he faced serious charges for the break-in of the Brentons' home. But he knew the Brentons, each personally, and burglary is a far cry from murder. Corey's younger stepbrother, Dakari Maxwell, who they knew as D, had been best friends with Josie since they were children. They attended the same grade school, played together in the neighborhood, and spent time in each other's homes. Surely Corey and Dee were not connected to the murder. Of course, the second consideration was that Corey, facing felony burglary charges, was locked up in the county jail awaiting his trial. Exactly 2 years earlier, in September of 2014, the Brentons had returned from a short trip to find they had been burglarized. Missing were expensive items such as appliances, jewelry, and prescription drugs. The cost of the jewelry alone totaled into the thousands. Joe promptly checked the surveillance cameras, although none had been set up in the front of the house. They did have a camera pointed at the back door. This happened to be where the robbers chose to enter. 2 men were clearly captured in the act of breaking in the back entrance.
I need to tell you to come to my house. We were robbed, and we have it on film.
Okay, were you guys home when it happened?
No.
Oh.
We just came in the house.
The burglars were immediately recognizable: Corey McCrae and Dee Maxwell. Corey was 23 years old, he's seen in the yellow top. At the time, his younger brother was still a juvenile at barely 16. The 2 brothers broke in the door of the family home, rummaged through cabinets and the piles of belongings left out by the Brentons. They brought in their own bags and took what they deemed of value. Obviously unaware of the surveillance cameras and showing no indication of looking for them, Corey nonetheless cleverly deduces that he should clean his fingerprints from the light switches before exiting the room. By the autumn of 2016, Dakari had already been released from custody as a juvenile offender. His brother, however, had a previous history of encounters with law enforcement working against him. He was held in the Duval County Jail.
I'm kind of showing you my hand because I got nothing to fish for. I got everything right here, and it's on video, so.
Corey was growing nervous about his impending trial and the length of the sentence that he was facing. He believed he could be imprisoned for 15 to 30 years for the break-in. Corey's girlfriend, a woman named Tyranny Sheldon, had recently given birth to their daughter. Corey did not see a long prison sentence as an option. Of course, he knew the Brentons. Perhaps they could be convinced to change their story. They could say that he and his brother had their permission to be at their house. This was all a big misunderstanding. Corey instructed Tierney to pay a visit to the Brentons. He wanted her to try to change their minds about testifying against him. He told her to mention their young daughter, to appeal to Venus as a mother. If she had to, he told her to offer money in exchange for their cooperation. As Corey's trial date approached, Tierney did exactly that. Afterwards, she reported back to Corey over the phone at the county jail, where all calls from inmates are recorded.
She can say anything else, but she can't. I guess they're supposed to be asking her 2 questions. Is this you? Is this him? And was your house broken into? I said, can I give you money? Anything you need?
For Corey McRae, facing conviction on a second-degree felony, Venus's refusal to lie for him was not the end of the line. It was the beginning. Corey got back on the phone and began ringing up others close to him. This included his brother Dee and a friend named Demetrius Ford. Demetrius was known as Peanut.
But listen, on everything I love, bro, this so serious, bro. It's so serious, bro. Man, listen, bro. I know I'm saying you just picked Jerry yesterday, bro. I go to trial tomorrow, bro. So D gon' handle up with you, man. Y'all boys handle up, man. You hear me?
Corey began to arrange the murder of Joe Brenton from the Duval County Jail, seemingly oblivious to the jail's practice of recording all phone calls and in-person visitation. The plan was to recruit both Peanut and Dee to do the deed in advance of what he said was his deadline, the day Joe Brenton was due to testify against him. There were many plans posited. One involved the use of Molotov cocktails to burn the house down. This plan was scrapped, however, when they were called the home was made of brick, and so they thought it unlikely to catch on fire rapidly. The next plan involved knocking on the door and claiming to be someone from the city, then to open fire through the glass. This was the plan Corey outlined to his now 17-year-old brother Dee.
You know what I'm saying? If they come to that and you see they, you know, they got that see-through glass, go wet that up, boom, 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 through that. You feel me?
Corey's insistence of the necessity of the murder placed pressure on his younger sibling.
When I get sentenced, bro. When I get convicted, bro. 15 to 30 years, bro. Mandatory, you hear me? Mandatory. Do you hear me?
Be smart about it, Corey told his brother. Keep your cool, keep calm, and think strategically.
That's the only thing. Like today, plan and strategize. Don't panic your business. Don't be all you want to do. He makes his job done, yours. Yeah. All right, let it go, man.
Corey did see his brother the next day, at about 5 p.m. in the evening after the murder took place. Jacksonville police, having rapidly located and listened to the communications from the jailhouse, tracked down Takari Maxwell and Tierney Sheldon. They were at the county jail, visiting Corey, and, it seems, delivering the good news. Detectives watched on and listened as the visit unfolded. Corey reportedly laughed with joy or relief when told that the deed was done. When the visit was over, all 3 were arrested for murder.
Was this planned?
Nah, I don't know what y'all talking about. God bless their family, though.
For Venus and Josie, the news that their former friends and neighbors were behind the murder of their beloved husband and father was a harsh blow. But it also raised serious concerns for their safety if they remained in the neighborhood. Venus told the local media it was not feasible for her family to stay in their home. She and Joe had been married for 20 years and lived together in their house for 25. But as the murder trial date approached, they determined that they could no longer stay.
I can't believe it. I'm very lost. If it wasn't for God, I'd have nothing. We're going to sell the home. It's not safe. His dad lives right down the street. They go back and forth every day, and so his mom and them can tell them everything that we're doing, when we're here, when we're not. So we live kind of scared. Scary because he's got so much pull, we don't even know if we can live here safely. Sometimes we stay, sometimes we don't, depending on how safe we feel.
Jacorian McCrae, against all odds, maintained his innocence. He faced a possible death sentence if found guilty.
Knock on that door. You know that daddy's going to be the one that comes to the door. They got that glass, that see-through shit, which they did. When the daddy comes to the door, wet that shit up. Boom, 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 boom. You feel me? His words. Boom, 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 boom. You feel me? When they hear a loud pounding at the front door, angry pound, they all wake up. Jonathan Brenton is the one that's going to go to the front door, just as he knew he would. And he actually tells his wife, Venus, and his daughter, Josie, to get back. Not knowing in that moment that would be the last communication he ever had. Corey McCrae is not the person who killed Jonathan. Corey McCrae is not the person who went to the house. Corey McCrae is not the person who had a gun, who pulled the trigger. They got bullets for that gun. That knocked on the door. Because Corey McCrae was locked up in a 10 by 10 cell, unable to get out. There will be no eyewitness testimony as to who the shooter was. There will be no DNA evidence presented to you. There will be no fingerprint evidence shown to you, the evidence in this case. The weapon used will not be produced. The clothes worn by the perpetrator will not be produced. There's no surveillance video of the killing. And there's no ballistic evidence found in Dakari Maxwell's room that linked him directly to the killing in this case.
Aside from the lead detective, the prosecution had two key witnesses, Josie and Venus Brenton. They each took the stand on the same day, accompanied by an assistance dog, Grace, to help them through their testimony. Grace was positioned below the witness stand during the questioning. Josie spoke about her friendship with Dee and how close they had been only years earlier. Josie was able to identify the voices of her former friends, Corey and Dee, from the jailhouse recordings played aloud in court.
Now, when you went to Garden City Elementary, did you meet an individual by the name of Dakari Maxwell?
Yes, sir.
Was he your age?
Yes, sir.
And did the two of you become friends?
Best friends.
What did you call him?
D.
Now, did Dakari Maxwell live near you?
Right down the street.
At 24 BC Johnson Road?
Yes, sir.
Within walking distance?
Yes, sir.
Now, as the two of you, you and Dakari Maxwell, got older, did you go to different schools?
Yes.
But did you stay in touch with them?
Yes, sir.
Did you consider Dakari Maxwell to be a friend?
Yes.
Had you ever been to his home on BC Johnson Road?
Yes, sir.
More than once?
Plenty of times.
Did you ever meet his parents?
Yes.
In 2014, did you also get to know Dakari Maxwell's older brother, Jacorian?
Yep.
And what did you call Jacorian?
Corey.
In 2014, did you consider Corey McCrae, to be a friend?
Yes.
Venus told the jury about the chaos of the night of the shooting, how she had arisen to the sound of loud banging on her door and retrieved her husband. Joe had been insistent that both she and Josie stay back from the door. Venus also spoke about the visit that she had received on the 19th of September from Tyranny. She outright refused to entertain any offer to change her testimony about the robbery, and had made it clear that her husband was unwavering as well.
20th of 2016. Did something happen that caused you some concern?
Yes.
And what happened on that day?
It's Corey's girlfriend came to off because of bribe to say that he would have permission to go and break into the house to get the stuff. That he was allowed, that we allowed to.
And just so we're all clear, when you say Corey, again, you're referring to this defendant.
Yes, sir.
And it was his girlfriend?
Yes, sir.
And so she offered you money?
Yes, sir.
And specifically to say or do what?
To lie and say that we invited him into our home, that he didn't break in.
And where did she want you to say this?
To this court.
Was that at this trial?
Yes.
Did she say anything else about this defendant or her relationship with him?
Yes, he said he had a newborn baby and that he was missing being a father and he was sorry for what he'd done.
Did this defendant in fact have permission to be in your home on September 21st of 2014 when the burglary took place?
No, sir, he did not.
And so if you would have testified that he did, that would have been a lie?
Yes.
Did she tell you how much money she was willing to pay you to lie for this defendant?
No, I told her I wouldn't lie.
Did you also make it clear to her that Jonathan would not lie?
Yes, I did.
Bizarrely, the robbery in 2014 was not the only time that the property was broken into. Corey's defense team suggested that perhaps the house was a potentially wider target. Only 6 months after Joe's death, 3 men again broke into the house. This time, Venus was at home. She recognized one of the men as a man named Curtis, but not his 2 accomplices. With so many incidents occurring in a relatively short period of time, how could anyone be certain that the shooting was related to Corey or his case?
They had guns?
No, they took my guns.
They took your guns. And then when you actually got your gun, they took off, right?
Correct.
Did you know the identity of the 2 unknown black men?
No, they came in the door after Kurt did. They unlocked the front door. They come in unwillingly.
Okay.
They were waiting on him to come in.
So Kurt went in first, and these 2 guys came in behind.
That's correct.
Were they masked up?
No.
But you didn't know their identity.
No, sir.
Did they threaten you?
No, sir.
Did they harm you?
They were coming after me and I pulled the gun. And they left very quickly.
The lead investigator from the Jacksonville police took the stand to outline how the evidence trail led from the scene of the murder directly to the Duval County Jail, where Corey McRae was attempting to scheme his way out. It didn't take long for them to acquire the incriminating recordings from Corey's call history, including the calls that he attempted to conceal by using another inmate's calling ID or PIN. Corey McRae was not the first inmate to borrow another person's PIN in an attempt to conceal their calls. It is called PIN swapping. The jury heard 6 phone calls in total, each with a duration of approximately 15 minutes.
And if you were worried about PIN swapping, is there something that you can do to try and find calls that were made using other PIN numbers?
Yes, sir. Again, common practice. We know the phone number that you're calling. We've identified that, either family or boyfriend, girlfriend, brother, sister, whatever it happens to be in the particular case. And then all we would do is search that phone number that received the call from the jail. And then we would have a list of those that would be provided, and then we would start listening to those. So it wouldn't matter what PIN number you used, as long as it was the same person calling those phone numbers.
So you could find any call from the jail made to a particular number once that number has been identified.
And that's what we did with those 2 calls, 2 phone numbers in particular.
On September 21st of 2016, were both Dakari Maxwell and Tierney Shelton located?
They were, yes.
And where were they located?
They were located at the Duval County Jail visiting Mr. McRae.
Around what time was that?
5:20 in the evening.
Now, when Dakari Maxwell and Tierney Shelton were at that visitation, was that visitation actually recorded?
Yes, sir, it is.
And were detectives listening to that visitation live?
Yes, we were.
And did you then make the decision to allow both Dakari Maxwell and Tierney Shelton to continue with the visitation of Shaquan McRae?
Yes, sir, we did.
And why were you doing that?
In hopes that they would mention something, say something about the murder itself.
And did that decision pay off?
It did, because they did.
It was a short trial, only a few days including the jury deliberations. When the verdict was returned, it was unanimous. Jacorian McRae was found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury also voted 12-0 against the application of the death sentence. Jacorian McRae was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Corey's accomplices were also sentenced. Demetrius Ford, who was 19 years old at the time of the murder, had not directly taken part in the shooting of Joe Brenton. He did not join Dakari when he drove out to the Brentons that night, but he did know what had been planned. He pleaded guilty to criminal conspiracy. Similarly, Tierney Sheldon appeared to have been privy to the murder plot, but did not participate. She pleaded guilty to one charge of tampering with a witness for her attempts to persuade Venus to change her testimony. Dakari Maxwell pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, admitting to be the man who knocked on the door and pulled the trigger.
You ruined my family, but God's going to see us through it. And you tore your brother's life up. Not only that, you got a 1-year-old little girl that's doing without her mama. All these people have been affected by you.
Since his arrest, Jacorian McRae has been arrested an additional 5 times in jail for charges including battery, attempted escape, and lewd and lascivious acts. His reported escape attempt involved slowly carving a hole in his cell and knotting together multiple blankets to form a kind of rope. He was found out and his efforts spoiled long before he could enact any of the later stages of his escape plan. And that was the case of the sad and senseless murder of Jonathan Brenton. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.